Hi everyone, and welcome back to me and to you to this channel. I wanted to do a video and therefore here I am. It really is that simple, and I want to talk about my favorite books of the last 5 years. I'm gonna do my little thumbnail thing. That's right, reading. Just to get some admin out of the way, you might be wondering where I went, what happened to my Bookstagram, if you remember me at all. To keep it very, very short and simple, I got hacked. It got deleted, or whatever it is that Meta does, and I haven't had access to it for almost a year, which at first I thought was really annoying because I'd put a lot of work into it, but subsequently, you know, I've moved on with my life, and that's that. Maybe one day I'll gain access to it again, but I think that is highly unlikely. However, I do miss having an audience to talk to about the books I'm reading. I have made a return, and I know you've been at the edge of your seat wondering when you'd see me again. Well, here I am. Aren't you lucky? Without further ado, I'm just gonna get into it. The first book I want to talk about is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is a contemporary fiction about a woman with an unnamed illness who sees herself becoming increasingly isolated from the people that she loves. This was one of those books that I very much saw myself in. It spoke to me. Of course, it was written for me, duh. And I really loved following this person as they gained an increased awareness of what it was that they were doing to themselves and to the people around them. Perspective, you may call it. Because though she has this illness, and though she's struggling to figure out what it is that's wrong with her, or even to accept that there's something wrong with her, she does at a certain point start to unravel that and start to listen to her family, to her loved ones, when they talk to her about how her illness has affected them as well. And when I finished reading this, I handed it straight to my husband and I said, this is so us. We are like the couple in this. And I thought that this was kind of, for me, the best that contemporary lit fic can offer, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this. I think it's best to be vague about what it contains, because the book itself has this kind of air of vagueness to it, so you're not gonna get answers. It's more of a meditation on going through life with this sort of heavy weight on top of you without really ever putting a name to it or fully figuring out how to fix it, because it's one of those things you can't really ever fix. So yeah, that is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. The next book I want to talk about is Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. J.M. Coetzee was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, I think in the 90s. I'm not 100% sure. That's neither here nor there. Just a little bit of trivia for you. This book is set in South Africa, where Coetzee is from. This book follows a professor of literature who becomes involved with a student. He is obsessed with Byron and has this like lifelong project of writing about Byron. There's a kind of hint for you there in terms of the type of character that he is or sees himself as. His relationship, if you can call it that, with this student goes awry, and we follow him as he is forced to kind of go into hiding and live with his daughter on a rural farm in South Africa. For me, this was what stoner by John Williams couldn't be. I didn't like that book, but I do really like this book. I like the mental journey that the main character takes. I like how he is confronted by the fact that life isn't this kind of romantic tale where he singularly as a man has to somehow conquer everything, and he is forced to take a back seat, really. And a lot of this comes through his relationship with his daughter. It's just full of ironies that are really hard to swallow. It deals with sexual violence, it deals with violence against animals. Like, it's not an easy book to read, so keep that in mind, but it is beautifully written. It is another book that is a meditation on the internal journey that a character takes. So I guess you could say that's a through line for me in terms of what I like to read. It's quite short and really, I think, deserves all its accolades. So that is Disgrace by James Coetzee. This book I've talked about plenty of times before. You may have seen me sing its praises, and that's East West Street by Philippe Sands. Right, so this is a nonfiction that does a lot of things. It's part biography, it's part detective story, it's part legal nonfiction, it is history. It just encompasses a wide umbrella of things. So we follow Philippe Sands as he traces the origins of the legalistic terms crimes against humanity and genocide. And it follows his family's past and the Holocaust. It is, in many ways, believe it or not, quite devastating. It is highly intelligent. I mean, Sands is a human rights lawyer who has operated on the highest level of international court. He is very firm in his beliefs, and I think that this book is very, very, very good at making you kind of sit with and question, what exactly is genocide? What exactly is crime against humanity? What does it mean in terms of a nation, a tribe of people, whatever it is, seeking justice for itself? What does it mean to be part of a family whose history is mixed up in either the victims of such crimes or in being part of the group that enacted this violence? Because a very interesting aspect of this book is the relationship that he forms with the child of a fairly high-level Nazi who really, really does not want to come to terms with his father's past. It is one of those books that is very messy in terms of the human relationships that it deals with. There isn't really that much more that I can say about this book than implore you to read it. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't somehow think about an aspect of what this book taught me. And I'm not going to tell you it's important, but I'm gonna imply it. Next up is a book that is very similar in themes, and it is Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. This is a book which on the surface, or to begin with, deals with the disappearance of a Irish mother in Northern Ireland. As we delve deeper into it, this is Keefe talking about the complication of the Troubles and especially the complication of the provisional IRA, the Provos, I believe they were called, the violent measures that they took and how they justified those violent measures, the disagreements within the group itself, the way that their violence and just in general the violence that occurred in Northern Ireland from so many sides, including of course the British Army, has affected people, how it is still this kind of shadow that hangs over Northern Ireland, how because of the way that it all fell out, the Good Friday Agreement, etc., etc., it is a incredibly difficult thing to talk about, and that there are many people who feel as if they did not obtain justice, or that they will never obtain justice, because the attempt to even seek justice would sort of unravel this very loosely held together society that was for decades, or centuries if you will, constantly undone by sectarian and just human violence. It is, to me, it read like a thriller. It was compulsively readable, very well written, as far as I can tell, well researched. It taught me lots and lots and lots about the Troubles that I had not realized before. Particularly, it gives a very unsettling account of Gerry Adams. He's scary. He scares me. I don't think I would love to sit down and have a coffee with him. I don't know if that's something that would ever happen, but yet, just in case you're watching this, Gerry, I'm gonna give it a miss. Anyways, so that's Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. I also tried Empire of Pain by him. I did not find it anywhere near as good as this. So the next books I'm going to talk about are by the same author, and she recently passed away, so rest in peace. That is Hilary Mantel. One is the Thomas Cromwell trilogy, which starts with Wolf Hall, and the other is A Place of Greater Safety, which I think was, I think this came out before Wolf Hall, but I might be wrong about that. How do I talk about these books without going into the long history of what they depict? I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. Wolf Hall and the Thomas Cromwell series follows Thomas Cromwell, who was an advisor to Henry VIII. He was one of the primary... what was the word I just used? He was one of the main architects behind the cultural and political divorce, if you will, between the Catholic Church and the Church of England. He was a towering figure. He has sort of been compared to a mob boss. He's that kind of like tough, gritty, from the wrong side of the tracks type thing. He represents this era in which no longer is it just the nobility or the church, etc., that is a way up. This is a time where you start seeing merchants become more and more important in society, and Thomas Cromwell is, I think he's the son of a tavern keeper. I cannot 100% remember. He is involved in wars across Europe. He spends time in Italy, and I think in the Netherlands, or what, you know, becomes the Netherlands. So now I'm just talking endlessly about who Thomas Cromwell was, but Hilary Mantel is credited with essentially bringing him back from obscurity, from fleshing him out as a human being through this series of books that is written almost like a movie script. What I mean by that is that it doesn't just sort of have this static narration of what the character is going through. You are experiencing it zoomed out, zoomed in, from his perspective, from the perspective of others. It is so beautifully done, so breathtakingly written. It is so good at capturing the spirit of this man, his times, and the similarities and differences between the world that he occupied and the world that we occupy. I cannot say enough good things about this. I think it is slightly difficult for people to get into. I know for me, when I first tried, I was like, no chance. But once you do get into the style of writing, the rhythm of it, I personally think it's really hard to put down. I don't know what the experience of this book would be like for somebody who has no idea of the history. So I can't really say whether it would be a good idea to familiarize yourself with the history beforehand or just go into it blind, but give it a shot. Either way, see how you are with it. I know lots of people find it frustrating that everybody in this period was called Thomas or Anne or Mary. Yeah. It'd be like that, or it were like that. Focus on the depiction of humanity that you get through this. So that is the Thomas Cromwell series, and then the other book by Hilary Mantel that I adore is A Place of Greater Safety. This is another historical fiction. This is set around and during the French Revolution. We follow three principal characters. Oh, there's no way I'm gonna remember all of them. It's Maximilien Robespierre, Danton, and Des Moulins. Either way, they're kind of three. It's kind of like, I'm reading the Brothers Karamazov. It's kind of like the Brothers Karamazov in terms of you've got these three archetypes of men. You've got the intellectual, you've got the kind of poetic, dreamer, and then you've got like the man of action. And we follow, it goes through multiple perspectives. We're not just following these three characters, but they are kind of like the anchor of the story. You have to know that the French Revolution and everything surrounding it, everything that happened since, was pure chaos and idealism and violence and blood and terror and war and love and just everything. And so this book does an excellent job of portraying just all the currents that went into this ceaseless river of events that just occurred like a domino effect, one after the other, one after the other. Your head is gonna be like, whoop. And you're also probably going to struggle to figure out who's who and what's happening. But for me, it's so worth it. It's such a good book. It is so fascinating, and it does such a great job of placing you in this time period like a fly on the wall. Because once again, this is written in that kind of like, I think that Hilary Mantel was very interested in writing things as if it was written for theater. Anyway, my camera just died, but that's enough on Hilary Mantel. She's one of my favorite authors. Please read her. That's that. Right. Oh my god, am I gonna get... I'm sorry. Next up is Silence by Sushaku Endo. I believe that's how you say it. Endo was a Japanese Christian. And this book is a meditation on the ways in which Christianity, as a kind of very westernized concept, and Japanese culture met, and the ways they don't quite fit, the growing pains, if you will. This is set, I believe, I want to say it's set in the 15th century. No, it's set in the 17th century, so I'm way off. We follow a Portuguese missionary who, along with a fellow missionary, take it upon themselves to basically go and save Japan. Japan, if you don't know very much about its history, was extremely suspicious of foreigners, which you'll probably think, like, what country is it? Like, Japan was, did not like foreigners at all. And at this point, it had banned Christianity. It had taken very harsh measures against Christians. And so in this book, we follow this missionary as he arrives in Japan. He doesn't really know anything about it, and he's kind of told, don't go, because you don't know what you're doing. He wants to find another missionary who's kind of disappeared into Japan, who, rumor has it, has turned his back on the church and become an apostate. This book is about faith, the price of faith. How much are you willing to sacrifice, not just of yourself, but others for your faith? It is haunting. It is brutal. It is so lonely and dark. But it is beautifully written. It is a beautiful meditation. It is a necessary meditation. I think it's just one of those cultural moments that has so much relevancy for our times, because it deals with, you know, what does it mean to kind of bring these alien concepts into a culture that has completely built itself around very different concepts. What does it mean to be certain in your faith at the price of what may happen to others? What does it mean to judge others for what you perceive as their lack of faith? It's fantastic. I don't know that I'm explaining it so well. I probably am not. But if you don't want to read the book, I know that there's a movie by Martin Scorsese, or Scorsese. I haven't seen it because I don't think I could stomach it. But if you want to, then it's there for you to check out. I've seen some clips from it and it looks fantastic, but it is not for the faint of heart, I don't think. So yeah, that is Silence by Endo. Then I've got The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. I read this a little while ago, so I'll be impressed if I remember what it's about. But as far as I can remember, it is set in turn of the century New York. We follow a young man who is just kind of about his business. He's rich and he lives amongst rich people, but he sort of has this emptiness, this yearning in his life, and it is not until he meets this woman who is part of the same class that he is, but she has left her marriage, and so she is an object of scandal. She's an outlier. She's not a comfortable outlier. It's something that she struggles with all the time, but she becomes an object of intense fascination for our main character, and they strike up a type of love affair. And we follow him as he grapples with duty and being another brick in the wall, or whether he should throw it all away for the sake of something that matters more. And in this case, it's what he believes to be love. I think this is another book that's beautifully written and full of great insights into the human character and the way that we're always looking for these things that we can't have, and even if we have them, we're never fully happy with ourselves. We're always searching for something else. Fantastic book that helped reignite my interest in classics, which had kind of like waned at the period in which I read this. And also, look at that. I'm sorry, but that is gorgeous. So yeah, Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. Oh my god, I've got 5 books left. Can she do it? Okay, so this is Shogun by James Clavell. This is similar to Silence in many ways, but also quite dissimilar. First of all, size-wise, I mean, can you see that? Silence is obviously written by a Japanese author. This was written by a British author who had actually spent time in a Japanese prisoner of war camp during the Second World War, so obviously has a complicated relationship with the nation of Japan. This also follows a very similar theme as Silence. I think this is set earlier on, slightly earlier on anyway. I can't 100% remember, but I want to say it's early 17th century. Anyway, so this follows a Englishman who becomes shipwrecked in Japan. Once again, as I already said, this is a Japan hostile to foreigners, but Christianity has not yet been banned. In fact, there are Jesuits and Portuguese priests about. Therefore, there is a sort of rivalry about, which poses another danger to the Englishman, Blackthorne, I think his name is. Because obviously this is a time when Europe is just racked with sectarian wars, and there is also this competition for colonialism, for trade, for gaining access to the Japanese market. So we follow Blackthorne. He arrives in Japan. He doesn't know anything about Japan, and he becomes a kind of useful tool for various Japanese warlords and aristocrats in their battle against each other for supremacy in Japan. This is when the shogunate, I'm not an expert in Japanese history, but I believe it's essentially a sort of rule by a warlord, essentially. You have the emperor in place, but he's kind of a puppet, whereas the shogun is the main leader. This is also the period in which Japan becomes properly closed off to the rest of the world, which is a very fascinating but also terrifying aspect of Japanese history. I think that to some people this book might come across as a bit uncomfortable because it's very like, Englishman Blackthorne comes to Japan where everybody is so honorable, but also they do weird things like seppuku, and it's got all of that in it. But at the same time, I think when you're reading as somebody like me who is foreign to Japan, it's very real to our experience of like, whoa, what is this? And what are these aspects of this culture that is very different from what I'm used to? You do also follow Japanese characters. It's another book that meditates on what it means to be Christian in this type of society. It's a page turner. It's great. I mean, it's this big and I read it in no time. I really like this. So yeah, that is Shogun by James Clavell. Alright, next up. My god, will we get through this? Got 3 books left after this. Right, this is Dominion by Tom Holland. This is a non-fiction book. I'm gonna try to keep it very, very short. If you're interested in Tom Holland, I urge you to check out The Rest is History, which is his very successful podcast. This is a book that mainly centers around Tom Holland's thesis that Christianity is, first of all, it permeates every aspect of what we call the West, and it gives us so many of the aspects of culture that often we do not want to give it credit for. Concepts like human rights, etc., etc. I'm not explaining this very well because, believe it or not, it took him this much to explain his thesis himself, and I worry that the way I'm talking about it, it's gonna sound like a regurgitation or Christian apologetics or Western apologetics, whatever it is. That's not really it. It's more about describing how specific the Western outlook on the world, history, life is, and how we shouldn't take it for granted that other cultures or past times saw the world the way that we do, that there are very sort of basic aspects of our world that cannot be easily transferred to others. Dominion by Tom Holland. Check it out. Okay, the next one is The Eighth Life by Nino Harashvili. This is another chunker. It is a family saga that follows multiple generations of a Georgian family. And when I say Georgian, I don't mean the US state, I mean the country in, depending on who you ask, it's a little bit in Europe, it's a little bit in Asia. And it follows this family for the last 100 years, from the First World War until, I guess, the fall of communism. It has elements of sort of magical realism, obviously lots and lots of history, the history of Georgia and its relationship to Russia, and to certain degrees the West. Discusses at length what it means to escape, to leave a country like Georgia, to live in the West, but kind of always hear the call, feel like there's something missing in your life. It is a meditation on the different courses that life can take, the way that some things are in our control and most things are not. For me, definitely very important for learning about Georgia, which is not, I don't think, a place that people know very much about. And I think especially with what is the ongoing war in Ukraine, Georgia for many is a precursor to what's happening, because there was an invasion of Georgia by Russia. I think it was in 2004. Which is also described here. I think that's actually the last event talked about in this. It is a necessary piece of the puzzle that is the world that we live in, and I think that this book does a fantastic job of introducing you to it and placing you within this culture. And other than that, it's just very well written. It's very magical, as I said. It's beautiful, it's sad, and yeah, that's it. My camera is this close to just ending it all, so let's see if we can get these two final books out of the way. The penultimate book that I want to talk about is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Jeffers? Honoré Fanonnet Jeffers. This is actually an ARC copy that I was given a long while ago by Fourth Estate Books. This follows a African-American family from sort of, in some aspects, from like the beginning of colonization in North America, because we do also follow Native American characters who are intertwined with this family. I think, and I may be wrong, that it is partly set in Georgia and then it is partly set in Washington, but essentially that follows the sort of Great Migration route. My camera is dying, so I have to really talk quickly. This is another beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book that deals with the complications of race, of family, of class, of just, it's kind of like, you know, the modern version of the great American novel. It is beautifully written, and I think another aspect of this that's actually really great for me as a PhD student who is studying the history of the transatlantic slave trade. This follows a PhD student who is kind of studying her own family's history, which is obviously linked in that great horror. I can't go on, but I could go on. It's a fantastic book, and it really does deserve your time and attention. So that is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Please check it out. Right, and the last book that I'm gonna somehow try to talk about really, really fast is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurdy. This is another chunker, but my god does it read quickly. This is a Western. It is set at, I think the end of the 19th century. And we follow a bunch of cowboys, cattle ranchers, who want to move their herd and their whole business up to Montana, which at this point isn't really fully colonized yet. And so it's, in some ways, it's a kind of found family saga, and we follow these people as they make this journey. It's another book that, well, obviously I'm going to say this because they're my favorite books, but it is beautifully written. The characters are so well done, so fleshed out. It is exactly what you want a Western to be if you like Westerns. It's got all these complex characters. It's got a lot of gun-toting. It's got a lot of gun-slinging. It's got a lot of cows. And you know, before I read this, I was like, a 900-page Western? Me? But trust me when I say that this book is not what you expect it to be. And it is wry, it is witty, it made me cry like a little baby. And it is a page turner. Like, you do not want to put this down. You want to be in this world somehow, even though it was kind of terrifying. And that is where I'm gonna leave it. All of these books, I think, are worth your time. They certainly made the last 5 years of my life even better and helped shape me even more into the wonderful person that I am today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am not used to talking and my mouth is dry, and I have been rambling for nigh on an hour. So I'm gonna go now, hopefully edit this and release it, birth it into the world. If you like it, give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I mean, I guess that's engagement. And hopefully I will see you sooner than it took me to see you last. Bye!